get started, and I'll just let people in as they join. Awesome, Nina. Thanks for joining us tonight. Yeah, you two have worked together, know each other, and so I'll kind of let you guys take the conversation from here.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much, Nina, for coming on. I guess you want to start with like a little bit about yourself and what you typically work on, just for anyone who's going to watch this or who doesn't know.
Sure. Thanks for having me. This is really a nice opportunity. I am primarily a commercial director. I also do documentaries. I started out like, I don't know where to begin, but I actually wanted to be a photographer. I wanted to be like a documentary photographer. I worked at some like New York magazines, some magazines in like the photo editing division. And I don't know, it wasn't as gratifying as I thought it would be. And then I moved into like the ad agency world, did the grind in New York, and I started producing. So I started producing for a lot of directors. And so I was on set more and more, and I was just like, that's what I want to do. That's how can I get there? And then I went to Vice Media for like 4 or 5 years. And that's really where it began, because I was like, do I want to be a DP? Do I want to be a director? And actually I had like I might have told you this, like on a big job, this agency producer was like, oh honey, like women aren't DPs. And I was like, what do you mean? But I was like 25, and I was like, no, you're right. Women aren't DPs, which was so ignorant. But anyway, yeah, I shifted to eventually directing and signing to a few production companies, luckily. And it's the full-time job, passion, love, and I just have a big appetite for making things.
Yeah, that's so fun. I've known you for so long. I didn't know that about you.
Yeah.
So you moved over to Rattling Stick, like well, I guess nothing's actually recently, but everything feels recently because of the pandemic. But what was that, like a few years ago now, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say, so how like was that transition for you, and has it changed the way that you approach like going after commercials?
Yeah, I was really scared because I was just doing like, smaller budget branded content, like docu-style commercials and work. And when Rattling Stick reached out to me and we began talking, I just didn't feel my worth. I didn't feel like I deserve this opportunity, because that is like really big leagues for a commercial director to sign to a company of that caliber. That was, I mean, not even a dream, because I didn't dream of that. So I didn't know what to expect. I was really, really scared, really intimidated. My like role model in commercial directing, it was his company. He's the reason I went there. He's an iconic director. And I just couldn't believe I would be in like his company and these other amazing directors' company. And then COVID came, right? And the world kind of stopped for a while. And that was tough, because I was like, why aren't I getting boards? Why aren't I pitching? And I think I feel, and I know a lot of my contemporaries feel, like you take it personally. You're like, what's wrong with my body of work? Why aren't I seeing opportunities? My colleagues are shooting that and this, and you start comparing yourself. So it was hard at first, but then, you're patient, you keep pitching and pitching. I was also in a different league, so I'm pitching against really big name directors, directors who I had known their work for years. So I tried to look at it like, this is a step forward. Even if I'm not winning a job, I'm pitching against these huge name directors. Like this is still rewarding, and I'm learning. And then once I landed the first job with them, was an Audi commercial. It gave me a lot of confidence, and then kind of just snowballed from there. But yeah, they're awesome.
Cool. And so when it comes to like once the job's been awarded and you know you're gonna have to like go out and find a DP, because I don't know, something I really respect about you is you work with so many people, and I think you really try and find the right person for the job, and you like aren't afraid to work with new people, and you really curate like each team for each job, and I think that's like part of what makes your work so incredible. So when you start that process, like what are you looking for, like specifically maybe for this Audi job to start out with?
Yeah, it's interesting because when I was like in my Vice days, and even like a few years after, I was like going to the same 3 DPs, and I was like, these are my DPs, these are my guys. And then I started asking myself, like, why am I going to the same DPs? And it's not like I wanted to take work away from these DPs who became my dear friends, but I was like, am I leaning on them as a crutch? Am I being too reliant on them and their style and my comfort level? So I wanted to get out of that a little bit the past few years, and make myself uncomfortable and make myself, work with new DPs and new teams, because I realize I learned so much like from each DP and their process, and I begin to learn what I really respect and what I really like, and maybe what I don't vibe with. And like, I've known you for years, but we, patiently waited for an opportunity to work together. And that was like so awesome, because I fucking love, am I sorry if I shouldn't have cursed, like working with
Cursing's allowed.
okay, cool. I'm from Jersey and have a sharp tongue, but we sat here watching reference movies, pulling images, and I love to see how you and your process worked, which is very different from other DPs I've worked with. So each job I do, yes, it's like who will do this and bring something new to the table, and also like, how do I want to challenge myself in this specific way? Like Audi, for example, was like beautiful car photography, and I didn't necessarily have that on my reel. So that is part of it. It's a factor, because you also sometimes have to present and get your DP approved by said agency, said client. So especially for car ads, I imagine for like beauty ads too, like they want to see a DP who has shot this before.
Yeah.
So it is tough sometimes getting like a different kind of DP to shoot it. But with that, I was presented a lot of phenomenal DPs, and I ended up shooting with like a legendary DP. And I was scared to work with him because he's a big motion picture DP. And I was like, oh my God, I just watched his movies in theaters. Like, you get back to that insecurity place. Like, do I deserve
right.
it?
Yeah.
But working with him was beautiful and brilliant and wonderful. And I mean, he was like a magician. So yeah, each project, it's a little different for what I think you look for. And I personally love like interviewing new DPs or having a chat with DPs if I'm able to, like, because sometimes you get torn, like, do I go with this or that person? And I think to me it says a lot about a DP, a lot about a person who's like, absolutely, I'll talk to Nina, let's riff, even if I don't have the job, like I want to tell her my process.
Yeah.
Because for me also, like, I have to get along with this person, especially if it's like a big, multi-day shoot, a travel job. That does play a factor. I want to like know this is a good person, and he or she's gonna like really commit and give it their all. So I like doing like pre-calls, but some DPs don't like doing that, and I respect that too.
Yeah, that's funny. I don't know, because as a DP, I don't really get to hear about other people's processes, so it's always interesting to hear that portion of it. But going back to what you said about like, having to get the DP approved by the agency, and how it's hard because they're looking for someone who's already shot it. Lorenzo actually, that was one of his questions, which I'm going to read back to you. That says, breaking into the commercial game can be tricky. It's a very much, if you haven't tried it, we probably aren't going to choose you area of the industry. What advice can you give for new cinematographers who may have had more narrative music video experience to make themselves stand out in order to enter that side of the industry?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I'm sure if you ask 10 people, you'll get 10 very different answers. Because like there is no golden ticket to this question. I think I was feeling that way too. Like, oh, I don't have narrative work. How is someone going to hire me to do narrative work? And a lot of people are like, oh, you have to do a spec ad. But like, maybe I don't have $5,000 to make a spec ad, or maybe I don't know a colorist who can color this spec ad. So I think it's like finding people to fight for you, to champion you and be your cheerleader. Like with my agency, with Rattling Stick, I didn't have, a car commercial on my reel, but they pitched me and sold me in such a way that the agency like believed them and gave me that opportunity. And then you make a pitch deck. And I know it's a little different for directors and DPs, but I would say, the networking game is really real. I see a lot of DPs really like honing in on the Instagram game, and they get a lot of work and connections that way. That's always like a good hustle. Trying to find an agent who will really push for you, or if you're like a starting out DP, there's no shame in being like, Christina, can I shadow you? Start building a relationship with other DPs who then can suggest you for jobs that they pass on. It's one of the reasons I also did go to Rattling Stick was because I knew the senior level directors will pass on a lot of work, and then that opens a door for me. So I think it's like having people in your corner who just like really will sell you and believe in you and fight for you.
Yeah, it's so true. I feel like I've been doing this long enough now where I guess I hadn't in a while been told that I didn't have the work to book a commercial. And this past month, I've been denied on 2 jobs by the same agency. And it's so hard not to take it like personally. Cause I'm like, it was the easiest job. It was like literally shooting puppets on a countertop where I was like, why do they think I can't do this? Yeah. It makes no sense. But like, it was just one of those jobs where they had money and they wanted like a big featured DP to say that they had done it, and I just couldn't get past those gates. So I think for me, it really, to like go back in and not take it personally. My agent was like, you don't want to work with someone if they don't want you, like that's getting off on the wrong foot, and you should just let it go. And I was like, no, I want to do it. I want to prove them wrong. But it did end up working out. And so I think no matter what level you're at, that's always like some people, and especially at agencies, I think when they don't have the confidence, they need to see that the director, the DP has done that exact thing before. And so like, also then there's other agencies that are really cool and want to be cutting edge and open to it. So just it's like a numbers game of keep trying.
It is. And I just aside, like I just had a vision of you like in your kitchen, like doing a little like puppet show and like self-taping. I can do that. But no, I think it comes down to people are scared of what they don't know or what they haven't done before. And it's back to like the reason why I like to work with new crews and DPs and things, because I want to challenge myself. Like an easy thing is to hire that same white dude who did the past 10 Nike commercials. But you have to just like keep fighting, and you do have to have like quite thick skin, I think, to be in this game. But it's interesting sometimes because us directors, we face so much rejection. Like, and I know you do as well, but like, you're constantly pitching and pitching and pitching. Even to get in on a pitch is like, marginally viable of an option. So there's just so much shit that goes on before you can even pitch. So even just to get in as a considered DP, I feel like is a win, even though it might not feel like it.
Yeah, definitely. See if you could see in the chat, Carson wrote, and I'm also very curious to hear about your experience working with some of those top tier DPs and like how it's different from maybe working someone more in our age group. Tell us their tricks, Nina.
Well, it was Masa. I think I told that.
Yeah.
And I think like what stood out for me, obviously he's a bit older. He's been doing this a long time. He's worked with amazing directors. Like watching him, and I feel like this with a lot of DPs, with you, with a lot of other, like Logan, other DPs I've worked with, like I just never had to worry. I never had to micromanage. I never had to be like, put the camera here, do this. It was like him framing something up. 99% of the time, it's beautiful, well beyond my expectation. And so I just felt that confidence was so strong, and he was so humbled, so grounded. He didn't take himself or the work like so seriously. We make commercials. It shouldn't be, like we're not, working as surgeons or something. So I think I want to have fun with what we do. I want to like have a relationship and like the people we do. And I'm a big believer in like, if you're good, if you're a good person, if you're good to your crew, you'll get more work, you'll get repeat clients. Like I just can't stand for any assholes in our industry. And I think the cool thing about being a director is you do have a little bit of power. And probably as a DP too, in this position where like, if you see bad behavior on set, you can do something about it. I know I'm going on a big old tangent here, but I guess the bottom line is like, they were just really like normal people like you and I, with maybe 10 or 20 years more experience. So I just felt a little more secure in that. And I knew they would deliver, but they also listened to me and my ideas and asked me questions. Like, so I think going back to that idea of like, just try to do a call as a DP with a director. If you're being considered, I would just be like, oh, can I like get on a call with Nina, or like, here's some reference images. Can you send them to Nina or whatever? Cause I feel like that just goes such a far way. I did a early project with Shannon Palmer, who's a good friend, I think, of a few of ours, and a DP. And, I sent her my deck, and she sent me back a deck, a visual like delight. And I was like, oh my God, I didn't even ask you for this. And it just stood out so much to me, going that little bit of an extra mile, because we as directors have to put hours and days and weeks into winning a job. So I feel like just like a little bit goes a really long way, in my experience.
That's cool to hear. Sometimes I feel like, I asked to do that, and my agent sometimes like, oh, you don't want to seem desperate. I'm like, no, but I just really like the concept and I want to send something back. So it's nice to know that, for some people it does mean something. And maybe that's kind of, a good litmus test for who you'd be compatible with. Because if someone is going to think that's desperate, maybe you won't connect in the right way.
Exactly. Or you just read each other's birth charts and you're like, we are compatible. We did that.
We worked with, or we know another director who was reading us our birth charts.
Can I ask you guys questions, or?
Sure, this is free form.
Cool. How do you pick projects?
I mean, it really depends on the month and like how busy you are. And there's some months where I definitely take more money jobs than I want to. And what's difficult, and the thing that I find really hard to balance, is a lot of times like the super straightforward commercials that aren't creative book really far out in advance. So they'll book you a month in advance, and then suddenly these really creative, maybe a music video or a commercial that's just more interesting, or a short film will come along, and like creatively that's really what I'd rather be doing, but then I'm kind of already stuck
You can't get out of it, right?
Yeah, you
Yeah.
can't get about. So you end up having to turn down something that you're really excited about. Um, and so it's just a really tough balance of like, how much money do I need to make this month?
Yeah.
Or did like I do enough commercials and now I'm gonna say no to these commercials because they just sound boring, even though it's hard. And like honestly, I don't know. I am a dork and I'm excited about everything. So there's like it's rare that there's a commercial that I can't find some sort of joy in,
Mhm.
except this puppet commercial that I'm now really
Well, it's
um,
true. You've like the best you really have one of the best attitudes out there. Like, and that it really resonates.
thank you. I think, I mean, maybe it's good because it was such a struggle to get here. Like, I've done every job on set, and I heard, women aren't DPs for years and years and years. And I mean, even just, being a DP at all there's so much competition. And I mean, directing's insane, so I can't complain to you about that. And you have to put in so much more legwork up front. That's something I'm always like, how do you contend with? Because that level of rejection, you put so much into it, and then you don't even know if you're going to get the job. We don't have to quite go to that level.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, but it's the same feeling. Like the first few years, like I took it so personally, where I would be like, what's wrong with me? I would go back and watch all my old work. I would redo my website 100 times in a day. And, you get really hard on yourself to the point where like you stalk the person who got the job. And I don't know if you do that. I'm interested to know,
all the time.
like, oh, why did that person get it? And then you make up reason and excuse. But now I'm at the point where I'm just like, okay, that's cool. We'll go our separate ways. You never really know. You never really get a reason why you don't get a job, right?
No. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
very rare. But let's see if anyone else has any questions. Also, feel free to drop them in, or we can just keep riffing on rejection and choosing jobs. But yeah, just to circle back to that, I don't think there's very few things that line up in a really nice way. So it always feels like a gamble when you're gonna make a choice of what to do. So just trying to keep that balance open of being able to do things I'm really excited about and work with the directors that I really love working with versus maybe doing something for the money.
Well, why did you take our Vogue shoot? Because that wasn't a big money one.
Well, I mean, I have always wanted to work with you, and it just felt like a great opportunity. We were neighbors, and we would always talk about what we were working on, and it just hadn't lined up yet. And it actually, I think our other neighbor was also this DP, Adam Frisch, and he was like, "Oh, is Christina going to do this job?" And she was like, "Oh, I didn't think about that."
I do thank Adam for that. Oh, we miss you over here. We used to live like literally 10 feet away from each other.
I miss it too. But yeah, and then I just saw your treatment, and like it was with Annie Clark from St. Vincent, and you had so many interesting ideas and things I'd really wanted to try out, and it was just like this visual, I don't know, like smorgasbord of things to play with. And you were so open and collaborative, and I feel like sometimes I find, especially when you're working with such a tough client, like they were very specific and she had a lot of ideas and they had a lot of ideas. So you kind of don't really branch out that much, but you were like, no, we're going to still have fun and we're going to find the things that make us excited. And so you were always like pushing back and coming back to them with ideas. And I think that's honestly what saved the spot, because there's so many cooks in the kitchen, but you remained like so clear in your vision and still willing to throw out ideas, even when people were being difficult. So
I think that's
really
an important thing for like people to learn and like up and comers to know is like, whatever happens, like so much shit goes on behind the scenes, in front of the camera, behind the camera. Like you can only control what you can control. And that's something it took me a really long time to learn, was like, I can't control that talent's 2 hours late. I can't control that client wants another 50 takes, or, wants the cake positioned this way. All you can control is how you respond, right? So that shoot was wild, because I remember turning to you. We had so many scenes and we had one day to shoot it. And I remember turning to you at one point being like, Christina, you're just gonna get one take of this. I'm so sorry. And you were just like, okay. And it was pure gold. But I don't know. I just think like that energy radiates and goes a really long way. And there's no point like of being a dick, of being stressed, of being manic. Like, it is what it is.
Yeah, absolutely. I didn't get to the second part of Lorenzo's question, which was, is there anything specific that you look for when you are looking for a cinematographer for a project and maybe they don't have a ton of commercial experience? Is there something specific that makes someone stand out, or that you're like, oh, they would be great for this job?
Yeah, sometimes it is like specific, like, oh, can they light a certain way? Or it's like, how original can they get with their composition, or with their approach to this. Like, I love being really surprised by decisions that DPs make, in terms of like, why did they use this lens? Why did they shoot it from a bird's eye perspective? Like, I just told you, I just watched Pig today, and did the listen to Nick Cage do the Q&A, which was such a treat. But that DP who shot the feature film, I had just worked with on a commercial. And I think what I learned in watching both is like, range is also really important. Diversity is really important. Like, I think when agencies sometimes say, like, look at a DP's reel and they'll be like, oh, their work is far too dark, or like everything's really moody. But what they also don't know is they can do something sun drenched and bright and exposed and beautiful too. So for me, I always tell DP friends, like, even if it's not your favorite spot, like, sometimes you should add something like that, because people want to see diversity.
Yeah.
Not saying like, oh, we should all post all the pharma jobs we don't talk about, but I think showing some sort of diversity is really important. From me when I'm reviewing reels, because I'm like, oh yeah, they can do that really fast running footage thing, or they can do narrative, or they can do documentary. Like,
Right.
then we're great. Then they can do anything.
Yeah. And then Lorenzo also had another question. Thank you, Lorenzo. I feel bad.
Thank
I
you,
feel like I
Lorenzo.
should just
Cheers,
let you
Lorenzo.
ask it. If you want to jump in, or I can read it, but this is such an intimate one. So
I could just say it. That's fine.
yeah.
I'm already on video anyway. So what I wrote was, how much importance do like directors, particularly like when it comes to commercials, put into if a DP is signed or not, whether they're considered for a job? Mainly because there are different reasons why a DP that may not be signed, and that has nothing to do with talent. Is it a strong consideration, or is it something that's just a bonus?
That's such a good question. And I feel like I'm always like, why aren't there more DP agencies? Like, we as directors, there are, off the top of your head, you can name like 40 production companies, but for DPs, I can think of like 5 or 6. I do feel like there needs to be a little more representation for DPs, maybe some more like young or new companies. I think that could be really valuable. But to answer the question, it really depends. I think, for example, at Rattling Stick, it's a union company. I can only hire union DPs. But if I'm doing a job outside of them with my Canadian reps or UK reps, it's an open playing field. So I think it's just like, it's twofold, because it's like building the connections with your directors through whatever means you can do. Obviously with COVID, it's a bit harder to be like, let's grab a coffee, but I always really like when a DP I don't know who's up and coming or isn't repped, like sends me a very personal email. There's so many times that I get an email from a DP or editor or whatever, and it's like so clearly a template that they sent to 50 other directors. Like I don't really respond to those because I'm like, you're kind of wasting my time. Like you don't really know me, you don't really know my work. So if you're going to do outreach, like I would say make it quite personal and be like, can we get on a call? Can we get a cup of tea? That does go a really long way. A lot of my collaborators now were people that sent me a DM 5 years ago, you know, and then we built this friendship and relationship and they're top of mind. And then, and it's always good to like, I think when you're unsigned DP, try to get like branded content work because there's so much of that, like working with the Vogues and Vanity Fairs and things like they're constantly producing content. See who's directing those, who's producing those, and introduce yourself. But the bigger scale commercials, I would say most of the time it does have to go to a union DP, which I know is an unfortunate game. But look at the non-union production companies. There's so many of them, and introduce yourself to some of the directors on those rosters and like people that aren't on social media, right? Because there's a whole world of people that don't exist on Instagram, and I respect them a lot. And introduce yourself to those people because they're not getting inundated with DMs all the time.
Yeah, that's smart. It's the Instagram game is so hard.
Yeah.
Do you think that you have met the majority of people that you work with through Instagram or just more through word of mouth?
Yeah, I would say like probably half and half. Like now, if I do a job, I'll get sent reels from all the agencies. But before it was like a lot of people I met through my Vice days or through Instagram or through word of mouth. And like I said, it really for me goes back to like, do I like this person?
Right. Yeah. Do you usually use the same people for commercials and the same people for music videos, or do you find that the DPs you work with really float back and forth between the two?
I think so. I think they do float. I'm not like, I don't really do music videos intentionally. So like
Yeah.
you know, listen to like Celine Dion radio and like, you know, he's 9 out of 10 times. But like, could I do a music video? For sure. And I've been asked to do them before, but I don't know, something it's not drawing me. Like there's so many other things that I'd like to do. But I think what's really cool is bringing commercial DPs into documentary. Like I love testing the waters there because some DPs aren't prepared for this sort of filmmaking, but they have the beautiful ability to make a frame stunning. They know how to shape with light, but can they do a run and gun documentary with a 4-person crew?
Yeah.
That's like a very interesting test. So I like to kind of dabble in that like crossover in those lanes, because I'm like, documentaries, which I'm so passionate in making, I feel like there's so many terribly shot documentaries we see all the time on, you know, all the streaming platforms. So I'm like, well, what if just more commercial DPs did documentaries? It would make documentaries like explode. And that's kind of where I'm hoping to go in the next year, is like bring a little bit of a new style to documentary filmmaking.
Very cool. Yeah, it's tough. I started in more of a documentary space because I think those, you know, when you are up and coming, those are just the jobs that are easier to get because people are like, oh, whatever, you don't have to know lighting and you don't have to know this. You just have to be able to like follow the motion and hit record. And I was always so bummed about like the the expectation that was there, and how there was never really time curated to set up shots. It was like, no, we're just going to roll on everything and then we'll pick it in the edit. So it's so cool to hear that you're going in that direction, and trying to make it more curated and less like just get everything you can.
But those are like the most rewarding types of films where it's like, is this narrative? Is this documentary? Like, where are we in this visual world and landscape? But it's like, why can't you make a documentary of stunning film? Yeah, so I think documentaries, like, actually, I mean, I'm no DP, but like much not harder in a very different way. You'll gain so many skill sets, I think, as a DP to have that crossover.
Yeah, it's cool because you really have to like tap back into your roots and rely on the sun and rely on what you have, and instead of like, everything's dictated by what the world can offer you versus what money you have. And like sometimes those constraints make for the most beautiful images. I think it's just about having good planning.
Yeah, exactly. Totally agree.
Carson had a question.
So Nina, I was curious about the Robin Hood spot, just knowing that was like going into it a Super Bowl spot. So, in some ways, like commercial wise, like kind of the gold standard, or like what we all hope to do in the future. So curious, like even in prep, obviously like Logan shot it, like choosing him to shoot it. I mean, it turned out beautifully. So yeah, just kind of curious, like going into that, what that experience was like.
Oh man, I just like got chills because Super Bowl was like one of those moments where I was like, I never ever could imagine getting an opportunity to direct a Super Bowl commercial, like a national Super Bowl commercial playing in the third quarter. You see the ads and they're like iconic, and not mine was iconic, but like to be in the camp of these directors and brands, like it was just such a treat to have the trust of a agency and a brand to be their leader in this was really like an amazing experience. And I have to say, like, women directors don't really get many opportunities. I think I was one of 2 or 3 women out of like 55 spots, and that's really messed up. And so it was like a dream come true. And I was just like, I'm just gonna give it my all, but like continue with my own process. And Logan was like top of mind because 1, we're very good friends. 2, I know he's gonna work his bum off for me. And 3, when Logan takes a job, he is 100% similar to you, Christina, and probably everyone on here, but like, it doesn't matter the caliber of a job. He treats it like it's the biggest moment of his life. And I knew he was going to just like bring his crew, bring good energy. But he was a hard sell. He was a really hard sell because he was one of those DPs. I had to send a few reels and they were like, I don't know, he doesn't really have this kind of a spot. His stuff's a little moody, and I think he gets that feedback a lot. And so we had to like go back and make like a few custom reels, and I had to like make my case for him. And that's the kind of, I think, director you want as a DP, where I'm like, no, he is the person for this job, and this is why they trusted me in this scenario. And that was wonderful. And we just had a blast. It was such a beautiful shoot. It really was. And the brand, I think Lorenzo and I spoke about this. It was horrible timing because of the whole like GameStop drama. The people thought like, oh, this ad is a response to that, but it was just horrible timing. So the agency and I both didn't know if they were going to run the spot. We went into the Super Bowl not knowing. And so I'm watching the Super Bowl.
My God.
Quarter 1, I don't see my spot. Quarter 2, I don't see my spot. Quarter 3, which was supposed to be, I don't see my spot. And I was like really devastated because I told my family I was doing this and all my friends. And then quarter 4 comes and it comes on, the like soundtrack comes on. And I like almost started crying because you're just like, oh my God, millions of people are seeing this right now. And my friends are FaceTiming me. They had a Super Bowl party and they're like cheersing me. And it was just such a cool moment. And, you know, I hope more people and the Super Bowl ads this year we'll see can be more inclusive. I don't know. I saw one board that unfortunately died, but I don't know too many of my peers pitching on Super Bowl ads, but I hope I'm pleasantly surprised this year.
That's so crazy that they didn't tell you if it was going to air or not. It was like,
Of
sounds
course
like the
it
most
happened.
dramatic Super
Yeah.
Bowl of all time.
I was like, of course, drama follows me with this one. But no, it was awesome. And that was a really like cool career highlight.
That's cool that you were able to fight for it and get him through. I think like when you're making those reels, does it come like, did you specifically send certain spots or did the agency push stuff through?
Yeah, it's like in that scenario, it was his agent making a reel. And then sometimes I do this where I'm like, I tell them, oh, can you order the spots this way? Can you put this spot as the first one? Because people really only watch the first few spots.
Yeah.
So, and it's like how you're sold as a director too. You make custom reels. And then I was like, oh, but I know he shot this one thing. Can you add that as number 3 or whatever it is? And they were like so amenable, and yeah, it worked in our favor.
Cool. Wow. Yeah. So you really went super far. I mean, I don't think a lot of directors take it that far. They'll be like, oh, okay. So it's really cool.
Yeah. I think the thing is, like, if an agent is gonna make a reel for you, like the least you can do as a director is like watch the spots, I think. I think because not that I get it, but like reps on the back end, they see on those wire drive links where people fell off. They see how many spots this person watched. Did they watch the first 5 seconds or the full 3 minutes? So I really try to make it an effort to like really watch everyone's work, because I feel like that's the least I can do, and like gives them a little more respect.
Very cool. Should we talk a little bit about what other? I mean, should we talk a little bit about the Vogue spot and how like you kind of started prep for that and then where it ended up?
Yeah.
Like when the concept came to you, how much of it was there? I mean, I kind of know about this, but I just find it really interesting how this particular one developed. So how much of the concept was there, and then how much of it was kind of left up to interpretation?
That was a really, I think, rare opportunity where Vogue asked me if I could make up what this film is. There was no concept. They said, we have Annie St. Vincent, we have Porsche as our client, we don't have a film, can you make this up? And so this is always like a tricky one, because you're like, where do I start? Like, it could be anything. It's like the most blank slate. So that treatment that I wrote, I think I did, and I did the treatment myself. I had a designer do the first pass, but then I did, I think, 30 iterations of the deck. I think like by the time you saw it, it was on like 22 or something, because it kept changing and evolving. And then Annie was so collaborative and involved. We did like 3 Zoom calls that I was getting to know her. She also has a strong point of view, how she wants to be perceived and seen. So she was giving me ideas, and then I would write that in the script, and then she'd be like, oh no, I don't actually want to like eat a radish for breakfast. And we like meeting her, getting to know her, I was like, she is so funny and quirky and a little bizarre, and I wanted that to come across in the language. And then I think I brought you on, and we did a few iterations ourselves. You pulled really wonderful references, and this particular scene, you really rocked my world, because I feel like I was like a toddler, like trying to say my first word. I was like, I have this idea, but I don't quite know how to dictate. I was like, I want there to be something with multiple personas. She's all about persona. Like, how can we, multiply her, like show these personas? And you were like, oh, we do this. We have a MoCo. It pans through the room. We put her in these scenarios. We stitch it together. And I was like, oh my God, that's genius. That's like exactly what I was trying to say. I had like parcel tongue or something. Or I was like, but, and then that was like such a cool moment. We put the film out, and you taught me technically how that went down, because I'd never done something like that before. And we put that film out, and as this goes, like, 5 more films come out that week replicating the same technique. And I was like, we were the first ones though, like, I know it, and I feel like that happens probably all the time with DPs, where you're like, I just shot that,
Oh yeah.
Anyway,
Oh,
yeah,
definitely.
process wise, it was a bit of a lot of trust, and then a lot of like fear. And then the budgetary side was like a whole nother drama, where they were like, it costs what to shoot this? And
yeah.
I was, well, we want to do it right. We want to do it well. And that's a scenario where like your producers are so valuable, because they're going to have your back and fight for you to get the resources made for this.
Yeah, they weren't so happy when I was like, and we're gonna need motion control. But she pulled it. I mean, they made it happen. It's one of those rare circumstances when it wasn't bid for and they were able to
I can't
make
tell
it
you
happen.
how many DPs hit me up and they were like, how did you guys do this for Vogue? How did you get this budget? This is like the most premium shit I've ever seen. And I was just like, me and Christina, man, we just pulled lots of rabbits out of many places.
Yeah, we did one take of every shot.
Oh my God. I was like, you're gonna kill me. But you were just like, okay, no problem. It was fun.
Gotta roll with it. So when they just said like, come up with whatever you want, where did you start? How did you find the like first seed of inspiration for that?
I listened to a lot of her interviews on YouTube. Like, I think I listened to 3 or 4 hours of interviews, and I'm also listening to her music, reading the lyrics, trying to discover like, what don't we know about her? What hasn't been documented before? And a relevant theme that kept coming up was like, she's very shy, she's quite introverted, and she is funny. Like, she's a pretty funny, dry humor person. And I don't know, my first thought was Twin Peaks. Like, I was like, we got to go to Twin Peaks, because it reminded me of Agent Cooper. And that's where like the whole dictaphone, kitchen scene came in, where she's pacing back and forth. And then I wanted it to feel like almost like a play, like a performance. And that was also a metaphor for her process. It's a bit day in the life, but really in an abstract, performative way, and I wanted very dramatic moments and then very quiet moments. And also a lot of her visuals we wanted to incorporate, because like the Dick Cavett show interview backdrop we built, she's very like, her album Daddy's Home pulls a lot from like the 60s, 70s genre. So I wanted to insert some moments of that and have it feel a little mid-century in that way, but with like a pinch of contemporary twist to it. It was a really fun process, because that doesn't happen often as a director.
Yeah, to me it's like so scary to be thrown into the deep end like that, but you mean what you came up with was so incredible. Is there anything coming up that you're excited that you're working on that you want to tell us about?
I'm going to Romania in 2 weeks for a job.
Nice.
I've never been to Romania, but it's like a branded content piece. So it's like 10-minute branded doc piece, going back to the old roots, going back to the roots of, you know, down and dirty documentary style filmmaking. But I'm excited for it because I've been kind of missing like winter climate, and winter is such like a romantic season, being, you know, East Coaster at heart. So it's gonna be cold, it's gonna be snowy, it's gonna be, yeah, very, very charming. So that's what I have going on. And then I finally finished my bodybuilding pitch.
Nice.
I'm sending that out to some people for feedback now.
Very cool. So you're gonna, I mean, I guess I just know so much backstory about this, so it's not really relevant, but are you able to salvage any of what you had done, or are you starting from scratch with this?
Starting from scratch for sure. And those listening, I think it's a good learning that like a lot of times shit just doesn't get made. You put money into something, you put funds into something, and it just doesn't get made. And that was a experience where we shot a lot. We shot for 4 days, and then the whole thing fell apart halfway through due to a few various reasons. It took me like a year to mourn the loss of this short narrative film, but silver lining is I'm taking all my learnings and turning it into a feature documentary. So the footage we shot, which is so stunning, I can use as like a bit of a sales trailer.
Sure.
But in terms of what we will shoot, I'm going to start from zero, and I'll hit you and all these DPs up to come on board. Because the beauty about documentary is like, you need multiple DPs. You're like, are you available tomorrow to go to Texas? Are you available next week to go to Wyoming? Like you need an army of people. And to me, that's a really cool challenge, is to like get a pod of DPs who can all follow a similar guideline.
That's super cool. That's exciting. Nick just threw a question in the chat too. I can read it, or Nick, if you want to jump on.
Hi, Nina. I'm curious how you keep developing as a director. Like, it seems like throughout your work, you're really intentional about pushing yourself and like the creative visual language of what you're trying to accomplish. And I'm just curious if that's intentional every year, and like, if so, this next year, how do you want to push yourself or challenge yourself to grow in your craft?
Yeah, that's such a good question. I think something we should all be asking ourselves. Like, I love setting goals. I'm very competitive. I was like an athlete for most of my life. I love setting goals and then being like, did I reach those goals, or how do I reach those goals? So like last year's Super Bowl, and I'm like, great, amazing. What is this year? This year's it's a feature documentary, because I had a feature documentary that didn't get finished. We turned into a short documentary that did really well. And I'm like, what haven't I done that I want to do? Feature doc, and then some sort of narrative work. But I think probably similar to like DPs, like you feel you get pigeonholed sometimes, like, oh, but she hasn't done scripted work, why would we give that to her? And then you look at the trajectory, like of like Chloe, for example, you know, she did a documentary, and then like a documentary hybrid, and then like a Marvel film. So I'm like, well, maybe if I do a really compelling documentary that feels narrative, because that's my vibe, and that does get seen, and then like I'm like, Apple needs to buy it, and then Judd Apatow sees it and calls me, you know, you start bubbling and ballooning. And I think it's good to have like really big goals, because you want to continue to challenge yourself. Like another thing I really want to do, I just rewatched Eastern Promises, which is just such an amazing film. It's like, I'm like, I want to do like stunt scenes. I want to like start directing fight scenes, like real gritty, intense fight scenes. Like, I don't care about lighting basketballs on fire, making people levitate. That's not my vibe. But like, I want to do like some real badass fight scenes this year. So, you know, last year it was like Super Bowl and a car commercial. Cool, amazing. I'm really lucky to do those. And now I'm like, let's do a fight scene. Let's do a feature.
Gritty.
And let's go. I don't know. I'm just like, you start imagining, and then it just doesn't really stop.
Can't wait to see the fight scene you create.
Yeah, it won't be like nude Vigo in a sauna, but hopefully something it's cool.
Gonna be like one of the Sopranos fight scenes.
Exactly. Yeah. Like Carmela and I don't know, Meadow get it out for each other or something.
So good.
I don't
That's
know.
awesome.
I don't follow rules or other like directors' trajectories. I think it's just find what you like to do and don't copy other people. Just try to do something interesting for you and whatever that is, you know.
That's awesome. I don't want to keep you too long. I know it's Friday night, and I think, this has been such an amazing talk. If anyone else has anything else they want to throw in there before we go, I'll give it
And
a
nice to
second.
meet you, Nick. I feel like we've may have chatted before, but I have never met you.
I feel like we have a lot of mutual friends. I don't know if we've fully chatted, but we've definitely connected in some way. I just can't remember exactly.
Cool.
Yeah, because you came to town, you came to Nashville for a job with a production company I know. And I think maybe you were asking for a crew or something that I hooked up or something like that. But yes, good to officially.
Oh yeah,
meet
the
you.
Bronco commercial.
Yes.
Very cool.
I think,
Right.
Nina, maybe just one question to finish things out, just knowing that a lot of the DPs are kind of coming out of film school, starting their careers in different ways. Just, kind of advice, like maybe industry-wide, network-wide, building relationships as they build their own craft. Just your thoughts kind of being, a couple steps down the road and watching so many other people grow their careers.
I think try to find your contemporaries, like see directors who are maybe in your age bracket or like, in your bubble where you're like, oh, you just graduated from NYU, so did I, let's link up, because those are beautiful career like bubbles that continue for life. I think try to find your people like early on, and then join groups like this group's awesome. And then media mavens, if you're a woman or non-binary person, they are posting job opportunities like 10 times a day, always looking for shooters, DPs, editors, things like that. And just hustle. Like you have to hustle really hard when you start out, but like the grind is worth it. And we've all been there. We still are there. And just continue hustling, because I don't think opportunities just fall on your lap. I'm still hustling day in and day out. Like you have to keep relationships strong, keep meeting new people, and just keep hustling, because no one's just gonna magically give you like a $3 million Nike ad when you're 22. I mean, if they do, that's fucking awesome for you, but just keep hustling.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Nina.